Hey everyone, welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into a pretty fascinating sociological breakdown today. We're looking at fame, extreme success, and the hidden sacrifices you have to make to reach the absolute top. We are drawing all of this from a really insightful conversation with Dr. Vikas Divyakirti, who's a prominent educator and leader, to really unpack what it actually means to be famous. So get ready to look past all the glitz and glamour because we are going to explore the true cost of fame. Basically, the stark difference between what the public perceives and the harsh, honestly kind of isolating reality.
Right off the bat, I want you to ask yourself something. Does manufacturing a massive public image actually act as a cheat code for success? We do this all the time, right? We look at celebrities, top influencers, public figures, and we just kind of assume their lives are as flawless as their PR teams make them look. But is this perfectly crafted image actually giving them a real-world advantage, or is it just a trap?
Okay, let's get into Section 1, the game of perception, or manufacturing the illusion.
You know, it's actually wild how this illusion of deep intellect is built. It's almost too simple. A lot of top film stars and social media influencers that get hailed as absolute geniuses, they're literally just following a script. Step 1 is completely pre-planning every interaction. You script the questions and you script the answers. Step 2, they just read flawlessly from a teleprompter tucked right out of the camera's view. The audience at home thinks they're watching spontaneous brilliance. And then step 3, this is where it all pays off. They land these incredibly lucrative advertising deals and build massive credibility. And the whole shebang is based on an entirely constructed persona.
And here is the crazy part. Even if your perception is completely fake, the world still treats you based on that illusion. Because let's be real, the public doesn't see the teleprompter, they don't see the room full of scriptwriters, so they reward that figurehead with genuine admiration and real, undeniable financial gain. The fake perception literally translates into tangible, real-world benefits. But as we're about to see, collecting on those benefits comes with a pretty heavy toll.
Moving right along to Section 2, the burden of a persona and the isolation of leadership.
So looking at our source, Dr. Divyakirti, the contrast between who he actually is and his public image is huge. On one hand, you have his true self. He's highly active, played state-level gymnastics, loves playing pool, table tennis, cricket, and he's just got a really jolly, joke-cracking personality. But on the flip side, there's his public persona. Society basically shoves him into this box of a highly serious, totally unapproachable, morally rigid intellectual. He has to wear this mask in public all the time, completely suppressing his fun-loving nature just to satisfy what the world expects from him. 2,000. Just imagine running a company with 2,000 employees. You'd probably think, wow, if I'm surrounded by thousands of people every day, I'd have endless friendships. But the shocking reality of leadership at that level is that having true, unguarded friendships at work becomes practically impossible.
Let's break down exactly why it gets so lonely at the top. First, as a prominent educator, he literally can't be friends with his students because society demands strict moral boundaries and a clear hierarchy. But it doesn't stop there. He also can't form casual bonds with his staff or his top management. If he does, it compromises his professional distance and authority. Basically, he has to constantly act a certain way just to keep everyone comfortable with his power. It's so exhausting that he actually feels this profound sense of relief when he travels to a new city like Mumbai, just because, for a moment, that local pressure to be the serious teacher is finally lifted.
And this isolation seeps into absolutely everything, creating this massive, hidden emotional and social cost. Think about this. A $50,000 watch is never, ever truly free. Our source explains exactly why he flat-out refuses expensive gifts like luxury watches or high-end glasses and even turns down first-class flight upgrades. It's because these perks always come with a hidden social debt attached. A lavish gift usually means the person giving it expects a favor, your time, or an endorsement later on. An upgraded flight might cost you your privacy, trapping you next to someone pitching ideas for 5 hours. So, to protect his peace, he actually has to reject the very luxuries his fame attracts.
Which brings us to Section 3. Becoming media prey, the incredibly dark side of attention.
Just listen to this quote for a second. They need a prey every day. For 2 days of the year, I am the food. Man, that perfectly and terrifyingly captures the horrific reality of being a public figure. You inevitably just become content fodder. You're food for a hungry, ruthless media machine that cares way more about engagement and views than human decency.
Let's look at a real example from the source of how this actually plays out. Day 1,
A terrible, tragic accident happens involving students in a basement at a completely different, totally unrelated institute. Day 2, the media obviously has to report on this, but they desperately need clicks and views. So what do? They plaster Dr. Divyakirti's highly recognizable face all over their coverage. They explicitly link him to a tragedy he had absolutely zero to do with, simply because his face guaranteed higher viewership. And the fallout? Years later, despite the truth coming out, widespread public misunderstanding still persists. There are people in remote villages who still mistakenly think he was responsible.
So how do you even survive that level of unfairness without becoming completely bitter? Well, you have to accept the package. Our source makes this brilliant point that if you willingly accept all the perks of immense popularity, the wealth, the influence, the fans, you have to philosophically accept that becoming a target is just part of the mandatory package deal. You can't just cherry-pick the good parts of fame. When society builds you up, they reserve the right to try and tear you down for their own entertainment.
All right, our final section, Section 4, Success versus Relationships, the ultimate trade-off.
Let's unpack the sociology here. Why does reaching the absolute top of the world usually mean your personal life shatters? First off, a 24/7 focus on a massive mission leaves literally no room for standard family responsibilities. You just can't be a present partner while you're trying to change the world. Second, sudden massive wealth completely ruins normal relationship dynamics. It creates these unbearable power imbalances. Third, traditional, rigid family structures just aren't built to survive the chaotic, all-consuming demands of extreme ambition. And finally, top achievers face incredibly high, totally exhausting expectations from absolutely everyone. Friends, family, acquaintances. Everybody wants a piece of you.
It's actually kind of wild when you look at the correlation between the scale of your success and the survival of a relationship. With normal success, relationships survive easily. They actually act as a really necessary emotional and financial safety net. With mid-level success, couples usually stay together to fight through the shared challenges of building a life. But with extreme success, the foundational system of a relationship completely buckles under the immense pressure, the wealth, and just the sheer lack of time. So people at the very top usually either see their marriages fall apart or they just consciously choose to stay single from day one.
To really ground this in reality, the source points to a few very prominent figures in Indian politics and science. We've got names like Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Yogi Adityanath, Mamata Banerjee, and the late scientist and President APJ Abdul Kalam. Now, we are looking at these figures impartially here, purely as sociological examples. So what do they all have in common? They all chose to remain single. They understood that dedicating themselves entirely to a massive, nation-building mission meant they just couldn't afford the time, the energy, and the divided loyalties that come with a traditional family structure.
And that brings us to this ultimate kind of heavy realization presented in our source material. If you have a massive mission in life, it's better to walk the path alone. Taking on a truly world-changing mission or striving for the absolute peak of extreme success demands a sacrifice that normal family structures just cannot support. It requires this level of solitary, intense focus that makes traditional companionship almost impossible to sustain without causing resentment somewhere along the line.
Which leaves us with this final, provocative question to ponder for today. We've talked about the fake perceptions, the heavy masks, the profound isolation, the media targeting you, and the total destruction of personal relationships. So ask yourself, is the complete package of extreme fame and success actually worth the massive price tag of your peace, your privacy, and your closest human connections? It is definitely a heavy thought to leave you with, but an essential one for anyone chasing the top. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. And remember, always keep questioning the reality behind the perception.